And I want to use for a subject this morning, Jesus rose, now what? Jesus rose, now what? You know, what difference does the resurrection make? And we also, oftentimes we think about the gospel, we think of Jesus dying on the cross. And that crucial act gave way to the gospel. However, the gospel, the good news is that Jesus rose from the dead. If this is not true, then we have no hope for heaven. If this is not true, then death won. And Satan still has the power of death over us. If the resurrection is not true, then it's the biggest hoax of all time. And we are fools. But you know, I believe in the resurrection. And the reason why I believe in the resurrection is not just because the Bible speaks about it, but it is the witness of the first century saints. See, it was such an effort to eradicate any testimony of the resurrection of those who actually saw Jesus in his resurrected state. It wasn't like 5 people. It was hundreds saw him in his resurrected state. And they were brought before leaders to denounce they saw the resurrected Jesus. And if they said they didn't see it, they would live. But if they testified to what they saw as a resurrected Christ, they were killed immediately. They were beheaded. They were burned at the stake. They were put to death. You know, that goes against our natural instinct of survival to protect ourselves. But because, you know, all they had to do was lie and say, nah, you know what? I'm good. I didn't see it. But I think about that. I said hundreds and hundreds of people in the face of death could not deny what they saw. That's what I base my faith in the resurrection on, though the witness of those saints. But what they saw in the resurrected Christ was so impactful that hundreds were willing to give their life for what they saw. And ever since the resurrection, the expectation of all who receive this truth is that there will be a change in them the same way there was a change in those who saw the resurrected Christ. The women at the tomb, they were filled with joy and they ran to tell the disciples. The disciples, when they encountered the risen Lord, they fell down on the ground and worship. We ask ourselves this resurrection morning as we read and heard the account, what is the point of Jesus' resurrection? He could have just gone to heaven without coming back to show himself to his disciples and others. Why is this? It's because we had work for us to do. You know, we can't work. Work can't get accomplished living a life mourning the death. When Jesus was crucified, there was an unbearable mourning among the followers such that it was just paralyzed. They didn't know what to do. When we have a death of a loved one, I'm not talking about a third cousin. I'm talking about when somebody close to us die and it grips us. We mourn. Sometimes it paralyzes us. It captures our conscious and unconscious thoughts. We don't want to eat. We can't sleep. And any effort that's put forth to do anything is lackadaisical at best. So receiving and believing in a resurrected Christ gives us motivation and passion, the strength to keep on moving in our purpose and in our plan that God has laid out for our life, knowing that we will not be alone, knowing that we will be empowered when we are weak, that we will have strength in the midst of storms, peace in the midst of war, comfort in the midst of struggle. The resurrection is everything to the Christian. The 11 disciples proceeded to Galilee, to the mountain Jesus had designated for them to meet him. Jesus sent them to a place away from the distraction of Jerusalem, to a countryside of Galilee where Jesus would reveal himself and his mission for them, with the expectation of them committing the rest of their life to the completion of the mission he was laying out. Listen, Jesus gave his life for the mission of spreading the gospel. Therefore, the expectation in receiving the gift of salvation is nothing less than a life commitment to continue the mission. You know, the church universal has, they're losing its influence, and mission is distracted because too many people treat salvation like a life insurance policy. It doesn't have an effect on our lives. I'll need that on the deathbed, and when I go to glory, cash in. And with that mentality, salvation, then it's not a moving, empowering, guiding gift that we respond to in kind. It's on the shelf, collecting dust for when we need it or when we need to call upon it. Now, in verse 17 of Matthew 28 tells the disciples responding to see Jesus, the resurrected Lord of life, and when they saw him, they worshiped. When they saw Jesus, they worshiped him. We too need to see, to get the vision of Jesus as the risen Lord of life. With his resurrection, Jesus conquered sin. He conquered death, the devil, the grave. There in living proof, he stood. The sinless one with no sin, the grave and the devil could not hold him. The one worthy of all glory and honor, if our heart and mind will capture Jesus Christ, who he really is, it can't help but invoke worship and praise in us. I believe it was Jeremiah who says, if I will not mention his word or speak in his name, his word will be like in my heart like fire, shut up in my bones. I'm going to be weary holding it in. Indeed, I cannot. I believe our response to the resurrection in worship should be like that. If I try to hold it in, I may explode. If I don't let it out, it's going to be like a fire in my bones. I must let it out. I must worship. I must praise. I must call out hallelujah. It speaks volumes to me to know that those men who knew Jesus best would worship him. These disciples spent night and day with Jesus for 3 years. They had seen Jesus face tremendous challenges of opportunity and opposition. They had seen him when things were going well, and they had seen him when things were going poorly. They had seen him when circumstances and enemies were closing in on him. They had seen him when miracles at his left hand and right hand, and people wanted to make him king. These men, Jewish men, who knew the first and second commandment, who forbade any worship of anyone but the true and living God, fell down and worshiped Jesus as God. I'll tell you today that if those men back then who knew Jesus best would proclaim him and worship him as Lord and God, those of us who know him by the spiritual eyes of faith must join in with them in worshiping Jesus as Lord and God. Yes, those who know Jesus best worship him the most. This kind of echoes the seasoned saints. They say it a different way. They shout, if you know Jesus like I know Jesus. Notice that they bowed in worship. Some were doubtful. Some would not believe until they inserted their hands where the spear pierced his side and the nail pierced hands. They needed additional proof, as doubters always do. Many will be doubtful in our age too. We can't expect everyone to see Jesus with the same clarity that Jesus is the risen Lord of life as others do. Yet Jesus comes and ministers to us all. Will our response to the resurrection be a life of worship? Will we come to the house of prayer and have times of unrestrained praise and unrestrained worship? What's holding you back today? And as God was with Jesus on the cross, Jesus as God has promised to be with us to the completion of everything he has asked us to do. He says, I am with you always, even until the end of the age. You see, what Christ promised his disciples on that mountaintop nearly 2,000 years ago, the presence of God, that's our promise too. That he will be with us always, no matter what. The companionship of Jesus is offered to every believer as they make their way through this world. So that means that I don't have to worry about people forsaking me. I don't have to worry about people turning their backs on me. I don't have to worry about people deserting me in a time of need, because the presence of God is always with me. At times I may feel lonely, but I'm never alone. I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me, because he is always there, lifting me up, praying for me, speaking to me, empowering me with a testimony. For God I live, and for God I will die. Church, he has promised to be there with me all the days of my life. It's like a marriage. And I'm hearing God's vows. And he says, I promise that I will be with you in days of strength or weakness, success and failure. He says, I'm going to be with you in days of joy or affliction, freedom or temptation, health and sickness, laughter, sadness. I vow to be with you no matter what. Because Jesus rose, I can. Because Jesus rose, I shall. Because Jesus rose, I will, all the days of my life, continue to be a witness for him. Jesus rose, now what? We must understand the resurrection is not only a reality of truth, but what was given to me is that the resurrection is also a metaphor for how we engage this life in our walk with God. And if you would follow me just for a few more minutes, I hope that this blesses you. Jesus showed us what it looks like to be completely submissive to God. Completely submissive to God the Father. And as I looked at some of his final words on the cross, he said this, it is finished. He also says this, he says, Father, in your hands I commit my spirit. And how this spoke to me differently is that God seeks to be a God of resurrection in our lives. Each and every day. And what we're doing is we're taking on issues of the world each and every day. Burdens that we can't handle, pain that we can't soothe. We're gripped with worry and fear and anxiety and all of these different things that plague us. And these things have nailed us to the cross. And we're hanging there, bleeding and dying of suffocation. And God is waiting on us to turn whatever it is that has nailed us to the cross over to him completely and say, it is finished. Into your hands I commit this thing, because and we hear and we say it all the time. I'm just going to turn this over to God. I'm just going to let go and let God. And we actually think that's what we're doing just because we said that. But more often it looks like asking someone to do a project and then micromanaging them. And I don't know if you've ever been the micromanager, the micromanagee. It's rough on both ends. But if we're micromanaging, that means that we've asked someone to do something and we don't trust them. We don't believe them that they can do it. We have no confidence that the outcome is going to be favorable for us. So we stand over them and we hover over them with instructions at each and every step. This needs to be done. And sometimes you say, you know what? Forget it. I'll just take it back. I can't deal with this no more. And guess what? This whole thing, there's no progress. I can't move forward. I'm not productive because I'm too focused on something that I've given someone else to do. And we do that with God. Oh, yes, we do. We say, Lord, I'm turning over this situation to you and I'm moving on. Yeah. And the situation is still consuming us. Still has all of our conscious and unconscious thoughts. And we're looking over God's shoulders like, you got it now, right, God? Trying to tell God how to handle it. But at the same time, we nailed to the cross, bleeding out. And God is saying, well, you know, I got this. But if you're not going to turn it over completely, then obviously you haven't bled enough. Obviously, them nails in your hand and feet, they're not painful enough. So I'm just going to let it sit here and marinate until you're really ready to turn it over to me. Because who are you to micromanage me? Hey, look, I've never broken a promise to you or to anyone else. I spoke you into existence. You can't stand on my promise and not trust what the promise says. That doesn't make any sense. God, I'm going to stand on this promise. Well, have you read the promise? If I said I'm going to handle it, then let me handle it and you move on like it's handled. Because when you move on, you don't look back, you don't flinch. I got you. You trying to make me seem like them other people in your life you've given stuff to and they've let you down. Don't play me like that or you're going to bleed out. We're still hanging on the cross until we take God at his word. We say, you know what? Lord, you're right. This situation, this circumstance, into your hands, I commit this issue, this pain, this suffering, this worry, this anxiety, this frustration, this grudge, this hate that I have in my heart. Into your hands, I give it. You know what, God? It's finished today. Then we can receive God being a God of resurrection in our life and in any situation or storm. When Jesus rose, Jesus was different. He wasn't the same Jesus that was walking around. The Bible says that his countenance was like lightning and his raiment was as white as snow. What that means was his inner nature was showing. He was glowing. What was his inner nature? Was deity. His God was just coming through. This happened before. This wasn't the first time they saw this. But the first time it happened, it was just the inner circle. When Peter, James, and John were up on the mountain of transfiguration and Jesus' deity was shown to him. And you know what he says? Look, I just showed this to you because you're going to need this for what I got for you later. But don't tell anybody what you saw until you see me in my resurrected state. So when we completely give it over to God, then what happens is that burden and everything is lifted off of us. And the glory of God then shows through us because we're completely trusting the outcome to God. And we are off the cross now and we're focused on where God is leading us. We're walking not in blind faith. But if God told me not to worry about it, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. If God says that the righteous have not been forsaken, nor his seed begging bread, you know what? I'm going to believe that. I may not have as much as I want, but I'm going to walk knowing that I got everything that I need. I'm not going to let the world dictate my relationship with God because I don't have something they think I should. We see this is what God wants, a resurrection of our relationship with God, our faith in God, our love for God. And when this happens, we are different, just like Jesus was different, because it was the God in him and his deity was showing, and God wants others to see him in us. And the world can't see God in us if we're just nailed to the cross and bleeding out. You see, before Jesus was resurrected, he was not distinguishable. You wouldn't have been able to pick Jesus out walking down the street. You wouldn't have recognized him as unusual. You would have walked right past him. Judas had to point him out. There he is. Over there, the third one from the left. Isaiah 53:2 says this. It says he has no form of nor comeliness that we will see him. There is no beauty that we should desire him. But in his resurrected state, his inner nature of deity stood out and his inner nature came to the surface. What is the inner nature of the Christian? Jesus. And see, this is what the struggle is. The devil is trying to keep Jesus in. He does not want Jesus to come out. He's constantly trying to conform us to the world and keep us nailed to the cross, bleeding out. Some of us have been nailed to the cross so long we think it's normative. We've just got used to the pain. He wants to keep us nailed to the cross with all the worries and concerns and cares of this world. At the same time, God is saying, give it to me. Give me your life. Give it to me. Give me your problem. Give it to me. Give me the worries, cares, concerns. Let me bring new life into this situation. Let me breathe new life into your spirit. Let me breathe new life into your relationship with me so that you can have the life I spoke you into existence to have. And when we give it all over to God, then we can walk in promise. And people will notice there is a difference in us. Here's the thing. We're going to look the same, but there's going to be a calmness, a freeness to our spirit. We won't live life trying to please a world that can't be pleased. Let me tell you what else is going to happen. Because people are constantly trying to put you back in the box you used to be in. Something's going to happen. And they're going to look, because in this situation, they already have seen you just show out and just go completely off. And they look and they say, oh, it's going down. They look at you like, and you're like, what? They're like, I don't even know you anymore. What? Something's going on with you. Are you all right? It's the God, because understand, when we give it over to God, you know why we don't have to worry? Because we're on our way to glory. We you know why? Because we have a joy in us that nothing that happens in the world can take away, because nothing that happened in the world gave it to us. Man, we will be free to love in a way we've never loved before. Why? Because we're loving different now. We're loving others through God instead of just trying to love the person. You know, we're imperfect, very much so. And when I just try to love you, oh man, no, man, it's just too much imperfection. I can't deal with all of this. And no, I can't just directly love you. Just can't. It ain't going to happen. But when I love you through God, then I can see you like God sees you. I don't have to get caught up on imperfections. I just look at what God is doing in your life and I celebrate that. I don't keep you chained to your past any longer when I'm loving you through God. I don't like, oh yeah, that's who used to be hooked on drugs. Oh, that's who used to be a prostitute. Oh, that's used to be. And we characterize that. That's when we try to love directly. We just keep people chained to what they used to be. When I love you through God, I say, hello, child of God. So today we know theologically what the resurrection means for us. But today it's time for us to start living the promise of the resurrection and allowing God to breathe new life, new understanding into our reality as we walk today. We don't have to make this, you know. Sometimes I love Resurrection Sunday, but sometimes it's a struggle because people often leave unchanged. And we don't have to make this just another resurrection or Easter Sunday where we get dressed up, may eat a dyed egg or two, gather with family, eat, and still stay suspended to the cross, bleeding out. It's time to just say, you know what? Today is my day. Today can be your day where things that have nailed us to the cross lose its power over us today. Because I said the same thing. I said, look, I'm tired of being whipped and beaten and stabbed and hanging on this cross, bleeding and suffocating, and knowing that Jesus already did this so I wouldn't have to. So as a personal testimony, I said, you know what? I'm done micromanaging God. And I pray that this is you today. Say, God, you know what? I'm trusting you completely with this situation. I can't manage it anymore. I'm standing on your word. It is finished. I give it all to you. Let your will be done. Breathe life into me right now so that I can walk free of this burden, unnailed to the cross. So God, I give this pain over to you. It is finished. God, I give this failure over to you. It is finished. this stress, worry over kids, and I give my spouse, I give my marriage over to you. I give this job situation, this health situation, this unforgiving spirit, this grudge that I keep carrying around, I give it to you now. It is finished today. I'm done trying to be what the world wants me to be. I'm tired of thinking that I'm not good enough because someone else says I'm not good enough. I'm done living up to the world's expectation and not giving thought to your expectations for me. I'm done performing for the world, having nothing left for you. And I'm going to walk out of this place today free of what has nailed me to the cross. Yes, you know what? I'm scarred. But you know what the scars mean? It means the blood is gone. It means I'm healed. It means I finally received and believed God in his promise. These scars are a reminder of the healing of God and that I don't have to be left on the cross any longer. I am healed, and others will see the scars and believe in you. And we will be witnesses to the Lord, showing our scars. Pray with me today.